trying to.
As promised, I am back. You're all very welcome to First Wednesday series. Whether I can properly see you or not, you're very welcome, and we're looking forward to hearing you. Excellent. That's the important bit, isn't it?
That is the important.
You're very welcome, and it's wonderful to be here again. We're nearly in our anniversary month. That's next month. So it's wonderful to be back. And I'd like to take this opportunity now, so that I don't forget later, to thank Limerick Arts Office and the Creative Communities Grant for partnering with us and making tonight possible. And yes, so onwards and upwards. Tonight we have Lorna Shaughnessy with us, and I always think the poetry speaks for itself, and poets are very articulate people. They don't need hosts to tell you about what you're about to hear. So I'll just say that that Lorna is coming to us tonight from Galway. She worked as an academic teaching Hispanic studies in University of Galway until 2024. She has many, what to me sounds like a huge amount of poetry collections under her belt, 6 of them in fact. The latest one is called A Throat Full of Feathers from Salmon Poetry. It's on the table by Marion for sale, and I encourage you to take a look. It's lovely. And yeah, and other than that, she's worked on anthologies, translations, and she is co-editor of Maca Press, which has been doing excellent work for the poetry community in the last couple of years. So I don't think you want to hear me speaking about Lorna all night, although I could. Lorna, thank you for coming, and really looking forward to hearing you read. And let's give a warm welcome.
Thanks very much, everybody, and thanks to Dor, thanks to the First Wednesday series, and the lovely invitation, and to the White House for hosting the event. I had a couple of lovely memories just as I was walking towards the bar. My first book of poetry came out in 2008, and I launched it with Susan Miller-DeMars, who was also living in Galway, and still does. And I think the first readings we had outside Galway were here. I think it was 2008, so it's a while back. So that's a lovely memory. And the other one I had was, suddenly remembered that in 1986, I met Michael Hartnett in this bar. I had just got the job in Galway, and I was still in Belfast, and I'd gone down to Galway about a month beforehand to look for somewhere to live. I'd nowhere to stay in Galway, so I'd come down to Limerick to meet a friend who was living in Foynes, and walked into the bar, and there was Michael Hartnett, and I knew who he was, and I actually approached him, which I thought I was really brave to do. And because I was still doing a PhD in Spanish at the time, we had this lovely conversation about Lorca, who I found out that day he had actually translated. So anyway, too many water, but Michael Hartnett, one of our finest. So I'm going to read poems from this new collection, Throat Full of Feathers. It was written over the last 6 years. It's been a strange 6 years, I think, for a lot of us with the pandemic, and also so much else happening in the world, in the political realm. So some of these poems have come out of personal grief. In less than 2.5 years, I lost my parents and a sister. But also, some of them have come out of kind of feelings of impotence that I think a lot of people have been feeling recently, as we, the kind of images of conflict around the world pour into our living rooms and into our phones and our pockets. And I found myself so often in these last years feeling not just impotent but also inarticulate, like just not being able to find words to put on how I was feeling. So some of the poems in the book turn to music. I play around with musical symbols, and some of them as a way of trying to find strategies to work when you don't have words. Sometimes I've used Spanish words if I couldn't find the English ones that worked for me. And quite a few of the poems draw on the language and the symbols of fairy tales and folk tales. And I mean, retrospectively, I think I could see why. At the time, I had no idea what I was doing. But when you think of so many of these folk and fairy tales start with a child setting out on a perilous journey and having to survive various ordeals, pass various tests. So and very often they survive because of the help of an animal guide and woods to shelter in. So I think really at some level my unconscious was taking me to that language of fairy tale as I was watching the images of children suffering all over the world. I don't need to go into it. So the first poem in the book is called Safe Passage, and I wrote it the day after Russia invaded Ukraine. So, Safe Passage. Leave swiftly, child, on a night no sirens sound, and the only lights that flash in your sky are fireflies, fairy torches to guide you on a moonless path, where luminous spores sprout from the footprints of those who have gone before. If these should fade and you find yourself in darkness, crouch low and keep your eyes at fox height until you glimpse the white tip of a vixen's tail. Follow her then to the place where she stops to sniff the air and will go no further. From here, you must proceed by starlight or no light, by the touch of tree bark and moss, the smell of leaf mould and damp earth, the sound of your own footfall, your breath. Losing a sister in 2022 kind of brought me deeper into that kind of fairy tale world. I became very interested in the character of the good sister in folk stories and fairy tales, who I think is kind of neglected. She turns up in lots of stories, and she's very often there to help her siblings and to look after them. Right? Two of the stories I wrote about in the book are by Hans Christian Andersen. And the more I read, I wrote some poems inspired by The Little Mermaid and others, The Snow Queen. But the more I read his stories, the more I started to hate him, because he dreams up the most unimaginable physical suffering for his characters, and then he dresses it up as piety somehow. This is somehow going to help them get to heaven. So, The Little Mermaid, for example, he describes in quite a lot of detail when the witch takes away her tail and gives her legs and feet. She's told that every step she's going to take online will be like daggers stabbing into the soles of her feet. And if the physical pain isn't bad enough, she's actually not allowed to speak all the time she's on dry land, trying to meet and love this prince who she's seen at sea. She can't speak, but neither can she laugh nor cry, so she can't express anything at all. And so, feeling rather cross with Hans Christian Andersen, I wrote a poem which kind of opens my meditations on The Little Mermaid. And it's called On the Art of Suffering in Silence. on the art of suffering in silence. Hans Christian Andersen didn't invent it, but he made of it a moral victory, mortified the flesh of children, the pagan and the poor, whose only route to heaven was through suffering in silence, the only prayer guaranteed to draw the gaze of his indifferent God. And I found out when I went back and read the original of the Little Mermaid that she has sisters in the story. They're usually overlooked in adaptations, abridged versions and films and things like that. But they do their best. They make great sacrifices to try to save her, but we never really get to hear their voices. So I wrote a lament for them, for their sister, the loss of their sister. And what I did in the book is that on one side I have a musical score, which is Hans Christian Andersen's version, but there are no notes on it. It's a silent score. And then on my side of the page there's the words of the lament I wrote for them. So, Lament of the Little Mermaid Sisters. When we weep our mermaid tears, it's as if the sea itself were leaving us, as though we wrung out in every sob a measure of our stricken element. Without her, the sea has grown sluggish as clay. It clogs the rippling flutter of our gills and ties anchors to our tails. Unable to cry, it thickens in its own ongoing grief. This much we know, that our dead are not inert beneath the ocean floor, that our sister rides out the thrust that crests each wave with foam and cries out when it breaks against the rocks, calling to us in an alphabet that never sleeps, but comes again and again until we hear her in every detonating wave and piece together from its screaming shrapnel a book that will sound of iodine and salt, of coral and kelp, anemone and star, until we learn by heart the words and make from them a song that will fire in our veins and explode in the heads of men who will cover their ears and pray for mercy to gods in the sky who will neither hear nor sing. Some of the stories that the Good Sister crops up in across the whole world are stories that are categorised by ethnographers as brothers into birds. The Children of Lir is a little bit unusual because the sister Fionnuala is also turned into a swan. But there are lots of stories from all over the world where brothers are turned into usually swans or ravens, and it's their sister has to break the spell and restore them to their human form. The Brothers Grimm have a few versions of this, but there was one called The Six Swans that haunted me when I was a child. I remember it so well because it didn't have the perfect kind of wrapped up ending that you expect a fairy tale to have. What happens is that a wicked stepmother, who else would it be, turns the sons of her husband king into swans. Their sister is able to hide while the spell is cast, and then she meets an old a witch who tells her how she can break the spell, and she has to weave coats for her six brothers out of nettles. She has to do it at night, and again, and this is really interesting about these characters, she has to do it in complete silence. She has to actually live her life for that entire period in complete silence. No talking, no laughing, no crying. And at the end of the Brothers Grimm's version, or the one they collected, the brothers land, I think it's once a year they land on dry land to speak to her, and she hasn't had time to finish the last coat. So one of her brothers, the youngest, is left with one wing. So I've got two poems here, The Mutant and the Mute. Number one. The brother with one wing thanks his sister. For years you gathered nettles in the dark, pain screaming silently from finger to brain, and wove them into coats to restore our human shape. You gathered dock leaves at dawn to repair those hands for the same task the next and every night. A wordless rage on your stopped tongue, almost choking you. Blood smeared the lip you bit to hold back tears, but in the end, sister, not even your devotion could remove the hurt caused by others, not by you. Time cut short the task. To weave the last sleeve and unravel the final threads of a curse. Now I, freak testament, am the only living proof of all our pain. The telling mark of this single wing is mine to carry. Mine, the task to adjust my limping gait to its weight. Never again to soar on the thermals of sad exile. To the good sister. Hard to celebrate an unfinished miracle. It's been a year now, and I see my youngest brother still caged in that moment of incompletion, trapped between salvation and dismay. He does his best to hide the cursed limb under bespoke garments of fine cloth, but he's learned a new way of walking to counterbalance the wing, but he still looks off kilter. His brothers are awkward around him. Survivor's guilt. They stop talking about the neighbour's daughters when he comes into the room, afraid of making things worse. We all know he's condemned to shun or be shunned. The other day, I heard a woman tell her child that I wove the charmed coats out of asters. Starwort, she called it. Well, that's a pretty tale, I thought, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. So I said nothing. None of it was enough. Not the 6 years of pain, a year for each coat. Not the 6 years of words trapped in my throat. I think something we all experienced during the pandemic was the way it warped time, and I think for a lot of people who experienced grief and loss during that period, time became even more strange, more difficult to comprehend. So this is a poem that tries to just tries to get some of that across. Broken as it is, the lived time that binds us between and betwixt the mouths and ears of others, tweaked and twitching. The old names mistaking who we were for who we are, robbing the hour to pay a vassal's tax to a before. Face smashed on a tile floor, hands pointing nowhere. Time itself so wounded. Who knew it was mortal? And here we are, killing it. Oh yeah. Being the age I am and having lost elderly parents in the last few years, my surviving sister and myself were faced with the task of emptying my parents' house, the family home, which really had not been cleared out since 1977. And my parents lived into their 90s, so there was just so much stuff and so much to go through, so many memories. But we also encountered quite a dilemma. We were able to, do everything in kind of in the spirit of my parents' lives, frugally, no waste, recycled, gift, bring those to charity shops. But we were kind of stumped when we came to the holy statues. And we thought we needed advice. So the PP referred to as the parish priest. The reluctant iconoclasts. We left the toughest decision till last, possessing neither piety nor space to house them. What would we do with the holy statues? The PP advised, bury them, but break them first. I take the easy task of digging the hole. My sister grits her teeth and takes hold of the hammer. I dig deeper than needed. Not even the smallest shard of our mother's faith will be exposed to scorn, whether unintended or in spite. Reverse archaeology. After years of peering at the remains of pots and figurines rescued from the earth with scalp and trowel, glued and labelled for display in glass cases, today our hands lay to rest in a fresh grave the plaster fragments of what we have broken. The child of Prague's blue painted eyes look up at me, still serene. But I am grateful Mary's head is bowed. I cannot meet her gaze. So I do have a more upbeat Sisters poem, page 64. Here we go. Where is it? This is some very happy memories of. You know how every family's kind of different phases are mapped out, and the popular songs you listen to and the music that marked certain years of their lives. So this one's called Blood Harmonies, which the singers and company will know is it's what's often called for when you have siblings or family members singing in harmony, and there's a particularly what's the word for, a rich kind of blend of the frequencies of the voices. So Blood Harmonies. A cassette tape copied from an old reel-to-reel, all fidget and jaggedy breathed. Then three abreast on the back seat of a Morris 1100 with Beatles and Kinks for the 12th fortnight. Segue to the 70s with family favourites Simon and Garfunkel and the charts with Emperor Roscoe, until night rescue comes and signals from Caroline's ship to a shared raft and a transistor beneath the covers of a sister's bed, with batteries that never ran out, charged by body heat. Our heads on fire, that first time we heard Van the Man in the darkness singing Madame George, and stared, speechless, at the striplit display of wavelengths as the needle pointed to the source of his voice, at once so distant and so close. And you ask if we sang Blood Harmonies. Well, maybe not in a song you've heard, but each one knew her line in a three-part arrangement of sister chores and borrowings and turns taken in the only bathroom. And if dissonance sounded, it was rare enough and not sustained, and a solo line unheard of. I'm sure everybody's had a experience of those kind of sudden, very brief encounters you get with nature, with a fox in the headlamps, or kind of grouse chicks and a grouse running along the road in front of me the other day, just came out of nowhere. So this is a poem. It kind of riffs on someone else's encounter with nature, the famous poem by Elizabeth Bishop about the moose, and it's called Visitation. And the lines from Elizabeth Bishop's poem are, "A moose has come out of the impenetrable wood." I recognize this creature. We've not met before, but I know the dark corners where I looked for it in dreams. I stop the wipers, dim the lights, brace to step into the dusk, this unexpected meeting by snowlight. Face to face at last, I see there is no way around it, no way to find another route through densely planted woods. Unbidden as forgiveness, it has crossed my path, and I am speechless before its heft and bulk, its shape so alien to my sight and the visions of the mind's eye. The heat of its breath melts snowflakes before they reach the ground. Its antlers catch and cradle them in small drifts. Hoofprints fill up so fast that soon they disappear And as it ambles away, snow falls and falls on my shoulders. And because I started the reading, and I start the book with a poem about starting out on a journey in safe passage. The book finishes, and I'll finish the reading now with this one. It's a kind of a charm also for those embarking on a perilous journey of any kind. Great gifts for a crossing. A shield carved from ice to warm your hands. A sword that cools like a burning brand. Cobwebs for healing to place on your eyes. A molted skin to leave behind. Slipped in a pocket, a sand rose in bloom. Some primroses to light up the gloom. A daisy chain for around your neck. 3 turquoise eggs in a horsehair nest. A golden locket with the night sky inscribed. A small silver key to throw on the tide. Voices to steer you out from the shore in a raft of bottles of untold lore. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Lorna, so much for that lovely, lovely reading. These poems are done so subtly and beautifully. We're going to take 5 minutes so that those of you who'd like to get another drink or need whatever can do so, and then we'll come back in exactly 5 minutes and start the open mic. Also, just to save time, I will be passing around a red clipboard held up there by Owen, who's been very helpful tonight. Thank you, Owen.
New job.
Yeah.
It's a special one.
Yeah.
It's a one-off. He's not volunteering.
He's not interviewing, no?
No.
Oh, okay.
And if he were, the fact that I live with him would not sway me either way. But
Whoa.
No.
Harsh.
yes. Harsh is my middle name. But when we come back, I will be passing around that folder, which will have 2 things in it. One is a poster of tonight's event for us to write nice comments to Lorna so that she can keep it as a memento of tonight. And then the second thing, which is just as important, is our waiver, so that the people at the Limerick Arts Office know that you're okay with us taking photos of you while you're at the mic and in the crowd. So, and that we didn't break any laws and rules in that way. So, very grateful for you to be doing both of those. Anyway, we're going to go on break and come back in 5 minutes. See you in 5.